Imagine leaving everything you know behind, with a glimmer of hope for a better life in the unknown. How far would you go? Our protagonist, a young man from Senegal, decided to take that leap. Born and raised in the dusty streets of Dakar, life was a constant struggle. A life where every sunrise brought the same cycle of hardships, and every sunset, the same gnawing pangs of hunger. He was a man of few possessions but rich in dreams. Dreams of a life that offered more than just survival. Dreams that were bigger than the boundaries of his humble village. His name was Amadou, and he had a burning desire to break free from the chains of poverty. He had heard tales of a land far away where opportunities were endless and life was better. Italy, they called it. A place where one could earn more in a day than he could in a year back home. And so he decided. He decided to leave his homeland, his family, his friends, everything familiar, and embark on a journey to the unknown. What happens when the land of dreams turns into a battlefield of survival? Our protagonist soon discovered the harsh reality of life as an immigrant in Italy. The bright Italian sun, often romanticized in postcards, now seemed to mock him. He found himself tangled in the web of unemployment. His dreams of prosperity were replaced by desperate searches for work, any work. The job market, already strained, was unwelcoming to a stranger with no command of the Italian language. Even basic communication was a hurdle, adding another layer of complexity to his job hunt. Racism, a shadow he had not expected to follow him to this land of dreams, was a reality that proved harder to escape than the borders he had crossed. The color of his skin, a proud testament to his African heritage, was now a label that isolated him. The world seemed to have lost its colors, reduced to black and white, and he found himself on the darker side of this divide. With no job and no money, he was reliant on the mercy of strangers. His pride took a hit each time he had to stand in line for food handouts from charities. He was used to being the giver, not the receiver. The taste of the food was foreign, but the taste of charity was even more so. His living conditions were far from the comfort of his African hut. He was forced to live in shanties, sharing cramped spaces with others who shared his fate. The shanties were a stark contrast to the grandeur of the Italian architecture that surrounded them. His dreams of a better life seemed to crumble, much like the dilapidated shanty walls. Survival became a daily challenge, a far cry from the rosy picture he had imagined. His dreams of Europe were shattered, replaced by the harsh reality of life as an immigrant. Each day was a battle, a fight for survival in a land that was supposed to be a sanctuary of dreams. This, he realized, was the harsh reality many illegal migrants face in Europe. Back home, his family eagerly awaited news of his success, oblivious to his struggles. The pressure was mounting. In the heart of Senegal, nestled among the vibrant colors and vivid sounds of the bustling marketplace, his family waited. Each ring of the phone was a potential call from Italy, a beacon of hope in their lives. But the truth of his existence was far from their imaginings. The gulf between their expectations and his reality was a chasm he could not bridge. His mother's voice echoed in his mind, a constant reminder of his promises. He had pledged to send money home, to lift his family from their humble circumstances, but he could barely afford his own needs, let alone provide for those back home. Every letter, every phone call was a stark reminder of his unfulfilled promises. The guilt gnawed at him, seeping into his dreams and turning them into nightmares of failure and disappointment. He was caught in the grips of a harsh truth. The dream of Europe was not his reality. The glamour and prosperity he had imagined were instead replaced with the biting cold of indifference and the sting of rejection. The streets were not paved with gold, but with the shattered dreams of countless others like him. His father's proud gaze haunted him. He had been the beacon of hope for his family, the chosen one who would transform their lives. But instead, he felt like a fraud, a man who had promised the moon but could not even grasp the stars. His heart ached with the weight of their expectations, the burden of their hopes pressing down on him. The echoes of laughter and camaraderie from his village seemed a world away. He missed the warmth of his people, the shared stories under the African sky, the comfort of belonging. Here in this alien land, he was just another faceless immigrant, struggling to find his place. The weight of unmet expectations was a heavy burden to bear. As the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, our protagonist found himself on the brink of despair. The vibrant, bustling streets of Europe that once held the promise of a new life now echoed with a hollow emptiness that mirrored his own desolation. Despite being surrounded by the chatter of 1,000 different languages, he felt more alone than he ever had in the quiet nights of his Senegalese village. The language barrier stood as a towering wall, preventing him from connecting with those around him, turning every interaction into a daunting challenge. Every day, he was reminded of his status as an outsider, an unwelcome guest in a land that refused to accept him. The bitter sting of racism, subtle and not so subtle, was a constant companion, an unshakable shadow that darkened even the brightest days. The crushing weight of unemployment bore down on him, a relentless pressure that left him gasping for breath. Every rejection, every closed door was another blow, another crack in the facade of hope that he had carefully constructed. And yet, as he stood in line to be fed by charities, his heart heavy with the humiliation of his situation, he couldn't shake the image of his family back home. Their hopeful faces, their expectations for a better life, were etched into his memory, a constant reminder of the dreams he was failing to fulfill. The thought of returning to Africa, of admitting his defeat, filled him with a deep-rooted shame. How could he face his loved ones, his friends, his village, empty-handed? The fear of their disappointment, of their judgment, trapped him in a cycle of despair. His heart ached with homesickness, with the longing for the simple comfort of his African hut, the warmth of his community, the familiar rhythm of his native language. But he was caught in the unforgiving grasp of his circumstances, bound by his own decisions. He was caught between a rock and a hard place, with no easy way out. In the end, the harsh reality of his situation led to a painful realization. The dream was not as it seemed. The sparkle of Europe, once a beacon of hope, had faded into a chilling fog of regret. Our protagonist found himself grappling with a poignant truth. His decision to cross the ocean had not led to the golden opportunities he had envisioned. Every sleepless night spent in the cold, every demeaning job he was forced to take, every racist slur thrown his way, seemed to echo a haunting refrain. Was it worth it? The answer, he realized, was a resounding no. His heart ached for his homeland, Senegal. His mind replayed images of the sun setting over the vast African savanna, the rhythm of the drums at the village festivals, the comforting aroma of a home-cooked meal. He longed for the sense of belonging he had once taken for granted. The regret was overwhelming, but it came with a lesson. He wished he could tell the young men and women in Africa, those drawn by the allure of a better life in Europe, about the shadows that lurked behind the glittering facade. He yearned to share his story, to dissuade them from making the same mistake. His message was simple yet powerful. Europe was not the promised land it was made out to be. Building a life in Africa, despite its challenges, was worth more than chasing illusions in a foreign land. He wanted them to realize that the African soil they stood on was not just dirt, but a foundation upon which they could build their dreams, their homes, their futures. And above all, he wished he had understood this sooner. His story is a stark reminder of the harsh reality many illegal migrants face in Europe. The grass is not always greener on the other side.